Yo, what is up, guys? Joker bringing you another video for the 3.25 Settlers of Kalguur League, going over probably the most frequently asked question in any league. How do I make currency, right? Um, a couple of days ago, I decided I was going to farm a mirror here real quick. I want to say it was like 3 or 4 days ago when I actually started trying to farm the currency for a mirror, and I'm about halfway there, right? If I take into consideration my currency tabs, which is like my essence and my fossils, my map, like everything that I could easily liquidate, I'm at about 422 div technically, and I have everything under 5C just being filtered out, right? Um, if we take into consideration my character as well, uh, I think the character is like 50 or 60 div, if not more. And then the amount of currency I wasted on crafting and recombination, probably another like 100 div there. So I'd say this league I've made about 550 to 650 div. And I know that seems like an inconceivable amount of currency for some of you guys. I know that seems like an almost impossible number for some people, and I know it's nothing to other people. Some people print multiple mirrors a league, right? Some people get thousands of divines a league. I usually farm like two-ish mirrors a league because I only play for like a month and a half majority of the time. Um, but I wanted to go ahead and make a video going over currency generation because I know it is something that a large amount of players do struggle with. And with the popularity of this league, with ARPGs popping off right now, right? Like it is the age of ARPGs. Last Epoch's in a good state. Diablo 4 is in a good state. Torchlight Infinite's in a good state. Path of Exile's in a good state. Path of Exile 2 is right around the corner, right? So I do know that there is a large amount of new-ish or newer players that are coming into the game. And since there is 10 years of knowledge in Path of Exile, I don't even know everything. I have 7,300 hours, and I'd say I know 50 to 60% of stuff. So I'm not even the most knowledgeable player, but I do know enough to make a decent amount of currency, and that's the knowledge that I'm hoping to like pass on, right? So let's start going over currency generation as like a broad term. How currency generation works is it breaks down into a 60-20-20 split between player knowledge, player time, and luck, right? The reason why I say it falls into this 60-20-20 split is because of the fact that you can play for 1,000 hours, but if you don't know how to generate currency effectively, you'll still be relatively poor. You can get lucky and drop a mirror in that 1,000 hours, but you can still be poor because in 1,000 hours of a knowledgeable player playing and making currency, they are able to make multiple mirrors, right? So knowledge is the biggest thing. That's why I advocate for every league that you play, you try to focus on one thing and learn one thing specifically. I've done that for the past couple of leagues, well, past couple, but like the past 10 leagues where I've broken down and I've focused on learning one thing at a time, right? One league I focused specifically on a character creation, and I made like 10 characters trying to build them from scratch to make sure that I had a understanding of how damage scaling, defensive layers, and all of this worked. That way, in the future leagues, I was able to get to higher tier content faster and farm it more efficiently. One league I focused specifically on currency generation, seeing how much currency I could make at league start to go ahead and pass that knowledge first. Take a look at trends of the market, understanding it, stuff like that. this league, I'm focusing on crafting. That way, I have the ability of self crafting a lot of my gear because self crafting your gear is always going to be cheaper than buying it, right? Like 99.9% of the time, self crafting your gear is going to be cheaper than actually buying it. And crafting was one of my weaker knowledge sets in Path of Exile. So that's what I've been focusing on this league is how do I craft? How do I work better? Tags, what I can do with what currency affects meta mods, stuff like that, right? Breaking it down into specifically how do I craft good items type thing. And I tend to only focus on one thing every league because, like I said, there's 10 years of knowledge in Path of Exile. If you try to focus on everything, you will easily get overwhelmed and you will get burnt out. That's not an if, and, or but, that's an indefinite statement. With that long winded intro segment out of the way, let's get into some do's and don'ts, right? A couple of things that you're going to want to make sure that you do is you're going to want to make sure that you upgrade your character to a comfortable point. What do I mean by that? You're going to want to have somewhere between 60 to 100K effective EHP and anywhere between 6 to 12 million boss DPS. This is going to go ahead and put your character in a very comfortable state. And it's something that a lot of players neglect doing, right? They won't waste I'm sorry, not waste. They won't use currency upgrading their character because they'll be trying to save up for some kind of big upgrade, trying to somehow save up for a mage blood while they're on a mediocre character, while they're effectively killing their farming strategies, right? Because the better your character is, the wider the variety of content that you are able to do. So that's why I'm suggesting get to a comfortable state where your character doesn't die very often and you have enough damage to do a vast majority of the content in the game, which that effective EHP of like 60K plus and that 6 to 12 million boss DPS, that's going to have you being able to do any of the regular bosses and do 8 mod corrupted T16 maps relatively easy, right? There's still going to be things that you cannot do because certain modifiers will affect your build in certain ways depending on your defensive layers and stuff like that. But if you keep that as a rule of thumb of that's what I want to aim for, as well as being ailment immune, then you're going to have a much easier time farming currency because the less you're dying, the more maps per hour you're going to be able to get done, right? The more you're just able to blast through these maps, or if you want a boss, the easier you're able to take down these bosses, the more currency per hour you're going to make. And if you're trying to do this on a mediocre character, you're just going to have a bad time and potentially lose currency from whatever strategy that you do try. So this is what my current character looks like, right? I have about 16 million boss DPS when I have everything up working effectively, right? And I have an effective hit pool of 50K. Could I definitely invest more currency into this character since I haven't upgraded it since like day 10? Definitely, but do I need to? No, not really. It's able to do all of the content that I want or need it to do seamlessly. So I'm able to just focus on farming currency. I don't have to continue to dump currency into the character because it's at a point where I'm able to do all the content that I want to do. And that's going to bring us to the next point, right? Know what your character can do and know what you like to do. These are going to be two incredibly important factors, and they may seem like common knowledge to some people or like a no duh, right? But these are two of the most important things in currency generation because if you don't know what your character is good at and you try farming a strategy that your character just simply does not excel at, you're going to make far less currency than doing a strategy it's good at. Some examples are like early hit of the spectrum, right? That's going to be much more of a mapping type character. Lightning strike, that's going to be more of a mapping type character until like higher investment, then it can become a bossing character. But things like Hex Blast Mines are going to be more of a bossing character because it's better at bossing than that widespread AoE that you'd want in mapping. So keep that in mind of what the current character you're playing excels at because you're going to be able to make infinitely more currency doing what your character is good at as opposed to doing what they struggle with. The other thing where, like I was saying, it almost seems like common sense, but what do you enjoy doing, right? This is a big factor that for some reason a large amount of people ignore. And this is extremely important in currency making as well, right? Even if you see something that's the best currency strategy in the league, I'm going to tell you right now, it's not. Because if it was the best, then everybody would be doing it and it would no longer be the best. So there's no best currency strategy in the league, regardless of what anybody tells you. But you're going to have a much easier time grinding a much larger amount of currency if you're doing something that you actually enjoy. If you're doing some kind of strategy that you hate, like me personally, things like Sanctum, Heist, Expedition, these are all really good currency making methods, but I don't like them, so I don't do them. I know they are really good currency, but I don't like them regardless of how much currency I could get from them. You're going to print infinitely more currency doing what you actually like, right? Because you're going to be able to farm a strategy that you like for 10, 15 hours without feeling any kind of burnout. But if you try doing a strategy that you don't like, you're probably going to farm it for 2 or 3 hours before you give it up because you just hate that type of content. And that brings us to something that's going to seem counterintuitive, right? Because my channel is pretty much built on it, but it is going to be currency making strategies on YouTube, right? Things like this, where it has big, flashy thumbnails of, oh, fast, easy, big profit. You're going to make infinite profit. Like, this is the best 30 div an hour, right? This is not a really helpful, and you usually want to steer away from stuff like this, where it has these big, flashy clickbait thumbnails like, oh, you're going to get 30 div an hour, because the point of those thumbnails is just to draw traction to the video. And the more traction a video like that gets, even if it is true at a point, by the time 50, 70, 100,000 people see that video, that currency method is going to be dead. You're going to try it, you're going to lose currency, and you're going to be upset, and it's potentially going to ruin your experience with the current league. Some people may even quit because they dumped all of their currency into the strategy. So, any strategy that you see on YouTube, take it with a grain of salt. Majority of people are not doing it maliciously, right? A lot of content creators are trying to help, but the problem is traction on videos is a thing. The more people that see a strategy and run a strategy, the less profitable that strategy is going to be over time. So every strategy you see on YouTube, you have to take it with a grain of salt because if it has a decent amount of traction, decent amount of views, chances are it's not nearly as profitable as it was when the content creator originally made the video about it. Don't get me wrong, there are some bad actors and there are some people that do it purely maliciously just for the clickbait, knowing that it really isn't a good strategy and that they're mainly doing it to try to boost numbers, but that's not the majority. That's the minority of content creators. Up next, we have gambling. This is going to include things like doubling cards with Vivid Life Force or opening Volo's puzzle boxes or stacked decks. You do not want to do this. Gambling is a luxury that you can't afford if you're already struggling to make currency. Yes, you could get super lucky, but 85 to 95% of the time, you're just going to lose currency and it's not going to feel good. If you're maybe done with the league, you can dump all of your currency into gambles. But prior to that, just sell these items because the return from selling them to someone who can afford to gamble is going to net you way more profit than actually doing them. Once again, you can get super lucky. Anyone can get super lucky, but if you're struggling to make currency, don't gamble. It's just a bad idea. After that, we have rotating strategies, right? A couple of leagues ago, GGG gave us the ability to have three different atlases. Was it last league or was it 2 leagues ago? I don't know. We've had three atlases for a while, right? And you want to go ahead and set these up with different strategies. That way, when you start feeling burnout or you start feeling bored, you're able to go ahead and easily just swap between them, right? Me personally, I have a Harby farming strategy where I'm farming Harbies and Scarabs. Then I have a map farming strategy where I'm farming primarily scarabs and 8 modded maps. And then I have a strong box strategy that I just set up that I want to test because I have a large amount of ambush scarabs, right? These are all self farmed, by the way. So I wanted to go ahead and test these out, see if I like this strategy that I came up with. TLDR, it's primarily a scarab farming strategy where I'm going to be using ambush scarabs and horn scarab of the nemesis primarily with the modifier that gives them like the extra chance per modifier on them, right? And they're going to be like 8 modded maps. So the monsters should have a lot of modifiers on them. So they should have a super high chance. And it's not in T17 maps because fuck T17 maps. But that's primarily what this strategy is, right? And then I just cycle between the strategies. When I get bored of one, I just easily swap between them. Majority of the time, what I do is I look at my scarab tab and let's say I have a lot of scarabs to farm maps. I swap to that strategy. I see I have a lot of scarabs to farm Harby. I swap to that strategy. This prevents me from having to buy new scarabs and always has me running with resources that I've already gathered. Up next, we have investing, and this is going to be taking all of your unused currency and investing in items or bases or currencies that you know will go up over time. There are certain items that league over league will increase over in value naturally. This is going to be things like mirrors, right? Divines usually do it. Some of the highest crafting materials like the tempering orbs and stuff like that do it. There's a whole bunch of them. The easiest thing that you can do is you can go to PoE Ninja right? And you can look at currency and it'll show you currency that is on an upward trend, right? So things like the orb of dominance are going up because people are crafting items. Anything that has an upward trend is going to usually keep that momentum, especially at this point in the league, because people are going to be crafting items and these items are rarer and or you do burn through a lot of them, so they'll naturally go up in price. These are really good to invest in and just sit on them. Let's say you're not going to play for the weekend, right? Instead of just sitting on 5,000 chaos, invest in a couple of the items that you see making a increase in value. That way, when you come back after the weekend, you just have a nice boost in income. This is usually something that I do at the start of a league, right? At the start of a league, every time I get to about 3 or 4 C, I turn it into an exalted orb. Why is that? Because around day 3 or 4, exalted orbs are usually 5, 6, 7 C each, right? They usually tend to double in price. And then after day 4, 5, 6, I sell all of my exalts and I start buying divines. I mean, it all depends on like how much currency I drop at the start of a league, but then I turn everything into divines because I know that over time divines are going to increase. If it's a really lucrative league start and I make a shit ton of currency, then I invest in mirror shards because I know as the league progresses that my money's just going to gain that interest. It's just going to be compounding, right? Making it worth more and more as the league goes on. And not enough people really do this. They'll sit on like 1,000 chaos, which you really shouldn't, because chaos is something that usually depreciates in value over the course of the league, where pretty much almost all of the other currencies do appreciate. Almost all other currency of the high tiers does go up in price while chaos goes down because you have people doing things like chaos recipe, or if it's a very generous league, just raining chaos, then there's going to be a lot of chaos being pumped into the economy, which means that the value of individual chaos goes down, whereas the value of the higher currency goes up. Okay, so full transparency, real quick. I sold a wand for 50 div that I crafted earlier. That's where the two extra mirror shards came from. I did not just miraculously somehow make 56 div while I was recording this how to make currency video, right? I just sold an item while I was recording and I bought the two additional mirror shards. So now we're at 11 out of 20. We're almost there, kind of, not really. But yeah, let's continue. The example of items that you can buy, since I went over currency that you can buy, is going to be things like helical rings, right? If you buy an unsplit helical ring that's not mirrored and not fractured, early on in the league, I picked one up for 22 div and then I split it and I waited a couple of days. I ended up selling each split for 18 div. Now it looks like it's 33 div for the unsplit variant. And I think if you split it, I don't think you make any money right now. Yeah, technically you lose money if anything. So it wouldn't be the best strategy right now, but if you buy it earlier in the league and then you split it while it's still raising in price, you can make a decent chunk of currency. Something that's not really going to be obtainable for the vast majority of people is you can do that same thing with a simplex amulet, but these are like insanely expensive to the average player. So it's not really viable, but an unsplit simplex is 280. And then if you split it, what does it go to? If you split it, it goes to, let's take away fractures. If you split it, it goes to about 140. Oh wow, you literally don't make any money splitting a simplex amulet right now either. That's sad. But yeah, those are a couple of examples of things you can do, as well as the expedition currencies, like I was mentioning, like the tempering orb and the tailoring orb. Those are going to be things that exit the economy way more than they enter the economy. Hinakora's locks are going to be that same thing. I believe Hinakora locks naturally just go up over the league because because you end up burning through a lot of these in high end crafting. So if you buy them down here and sell up here, right? Just the basic economics, buy low, sell high type thing. Investing unused currency is one of the best uses for unused currency that you can do. One of the last things that I wanted to go over is being careful and double checking the value of your items. If you ever see anything like this, that means that you've undervalued the item. Do not sell it. It does not mean that there is a high demand for it. It means that you've drastically underpriced the item. And sadly, much like the real world, people will try to take advantage of you as opposed to actually helping you. Like, not one person told me, hey, this is actually perfectly rolled. So, yeah, it's actually we're pretty much double this. But after I saw this, I went ahead and I actually looked at it because I hadn't. I just threw it into a tab and priced it for what I saw them at. But then after I got spammed by a million people, I'm like, okay, something is not right. Let me take a double look at that item. And I ended up selling it for like 17 div as opposed to 7.5, right? So, big differences in price there. Sadly, people will take advantage of newer or unknowledgeable players. It's just really the world mainly, but it is really bad in Path of Exile as well. People will take advantage of you at any chance they get. There is a lot of greedy fucks in the community, right? Like this Oblolo person, he literally messaged me twice in the span of like 5 seconds. So just be careful. There is a lot of dickheads that will rather take advantage of an unknowledgeable person who misprices something as opposed to actually telling you, hey, you mispriced this item, right? But that applies to the real world too. The world's full of dickheads that will try to take advantage of you as opposed to actually help you. And that pretty much is it for this video. I just wanted to go ahead and go over a couple of things for you guys to keep in mind on how to make currency and stuff like that. Some things that may help you out in the future because it is the most frequently asked question at every league is how do I make currency? And pretty much what it boils down to is knowledge of the game and playtime with a little bit of luck. Besides that, everything that you do in Path of Exile, as long as you do enough of it consistently enough, you will make profit. There's very few things that you will actually lose currency doing. And they're mainly the things that you're unknowledgeable about, things like crafting, right? Stuff like that will lose you currency over time if you don't know how to craft or what you're looking for. So that's pretty much it. I hope this does help. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with this and future content. And until next time, take care.